Hello folks, White Guy here again. Welcome to my home on this very beautiful day. The name of this video is called The Why Guy Hates It When... ... You know, I recently did a video, it might have even been my previous one, where the Why Guy loves argumentative people. No, no, not that. It's the one where I talk about loving those who are in disagreement. Okay? Now, when I talk about loving someone who's disagreement, that doesn't mean that you're a foot, something to clean your feet off on. Okay, when somebody disagrees with you, love isn't defined that way. And oftentimes these people who are argumentative or in disagreement, oftentimes they're not sincere, and that's what this video is about. The Why Guy hates it when someone just completely ignores the context of my video, one of my videos, or a serious blog, and starts chasing a rabbit that has absolutely nothing to do with the content of the blog or video by pulling one word out and commenting on only that. Ignoring the context. Let's just pull one word out and make a comment on that. I guess we all do it to a degree. It's part of our human nature, but I still hate it. It's kind of like this. Here's an analogy. It's like if I were to share about my back pain and included how the doctor told me not to lift anything heavier than a gallon of milk. And then a vegan might come along, and just using this as an analogy, there's nothing wrong with vegans, okay? But might come along and dwell on how I mentioned it being milk. A gallon of milk instead of a gallon of water. Did that make sense? When the point had absolutely nothing to do with it being milk, other than just simply mentioning its weight. That happens all the time, folks. Yes, I hate it. But it's just, I gotta vent here a little bit. That's why I'm doing this video. In like manner, most Christians who disagree with my understanding of how all of creation will be reconciled unto God, instead of commenting on or disputing the numerous Bible passages that I provide to back it up, okay? They'll do, what about verse? You see? And on the surface, there's nothing wrong with that, but they'll do, what about verses in X, Y, and Z, all right? That contextually had nothing to do with the meaning of the passages that I happen to provide as evidence. Had nothing to do with it. Let us pull something right out of thin air, okay? Rather than staying in context. So without even realizing it, though, this is usually what happens. These argumentative people, okay, they're pulling out perverted, more times than not, they'll pull out perverted Latin-based passages, Bible passages that kill, steal, and destroy a trust in God. So who does that make sense to when they do that? It doesn't make sense to me. So don't fall for it. It's just a distraction. Folks who do this, their questions are usually not sincere. When they say, well, what about Bible passage X, Y, and Z? They're usually not sincere because their minds are already made up. All right? But we don't know that for sure. So I give them a chance by simply asking two simple questions. Are they sincere? And or if their mind's already made up. Now, what's wrong with asking those two questions? Here's a recent example when I did such a thing on YouTube here, where I recently did a video disproving that Jesus was not talking about a devil. Okay? When he said, I saw Satan fall from heaven like lightning. And by the way, Satan with a small s. That's important to understand, okay? So instead of commenting on the cultural and linguistic evidence that I provided, proving my point, that the word Satan is not a name, he or she said, instead of commenting on that, commenting on the Hebrew culture, on the Hebrew language, the word, the origins of the word, instead of that, quote, what about Jesus being tempted by Satan, with a capital S, in the wilderness? How do you explain that? Okay? It was the second question of the two that made me suspicious of his or her sincerity. Because there's nothing wrong with saying, well, what about Jesus being tempted? Because, you know, the word Satan was involved. There's nothing wrong with that. But how do you explain that? It left kind of a bad taste in my mouth, so it just added to my suspicions. So I simply asked if their question was sincere. I then continued, though, after asking that of my viewer, I continued by answering their question. Okay? Of Jesus being tempted in the wilderness. And I'm going to share that here in just a moment. All right, coming up. But instead of responding, this is what I hate. Instead of responding to my answer and giving me a rebuttal, a disagreement, anything like that, which is how dialogue works, okay? This was their only response. My questions, quote, "My questions are sincere. I can't understand why you get so touchy as if you take a question as a personal attack on you," close quote. Yeah, but then that's okay. But then at least address my answer. But I didn't get any of that. Now you see why I grew suspicious. So to clarify, and my response to this person was ironic and hypocritical. I'm not the one being touchy here. All I did was ask two simple questions of you, and you responded as if it were a personal attack on you. Can you see it? Consider rereading what you wrote. This is what I continued to say to this person. We both should be wise when using only text. In reality, it's probable that neither of us is touchy. So I apologize for my part if you took my question as an offense. Also, there's a real chance that you are sincere and not hypocritical as well, and I can see that possibility. Now I'm going to continue by sharing what I answered about Jesus being tempted. I know I've done a video on it, and I've mentioned it 2 or 3 times on past videos, but follow me. With all that said, I noticed how you didn't respond to my answer from your original question of, how do you explain that? I've discovered in all the years that I've been doing videos that most sincere people are willing to have a dialogue about the context of my video rather than finding fault with a passive question, as this person did, okay? In other words, you didn't address my answer, but only took offense to my 2 questions. Does that make sense? Close quote. Okay, there's the wind. A gust of wind here to give us a slight little break to think about. Think about what? There, calm down. Okay. Anyway, by the way, for my present viewers right now, this was my short answer about Jesus being tempted. When asked, how do you explain that? And here's a PS too. By the way, being tempted is not a sin, nor does it make Jesus any less perfect. So don't even go there with your comments. Anyway. Also, some Bibles use the word tested instead of the word tempted. And Jesus passed with flying colors, folks, okay? So here's my answer in closing this video. Quote, Jesus wasn't being tempted by Satan, with a capital S I provided, but by an adversary that the Hebrew language calls a Satan. So the question should be what, not who, was being adversarial to Jesus in his wilderness experience. Notice how every temptation he had was in context to his flesh. Okay? And in the flesh's desire to have comfort or to have power. It is written that Jesus suffered every temptation known to man. So what, not who, tempted Jesus in the wilderness? Well, just like us, it was his flesh. This was the beginning of it all. Jesus had to overcome the comforts and desires of his flesh, or else he would have never been willing to go to the cross and suffer extreme discomforts of his flesh. Okay? Here's another reference that I gave this person. Jesus turned to Peter once and called him a Satan. In Hebrew, it's ha-satan. Okay? Why? Because Peter was being adversarial to Jesus' plans. And it's proven out in the same passage. Jesus also told Peter that he was being a stumbling block, which is a perfect definition describing a adversary, a Satan, ha-satan. Okay? So in closing this video, you know, I didn't receive any other responses from this individual. So I can't help but to conclude that my initial assessment of insincerity was incorrect, and that their mind was already made up. So what say you? Now I invite all of you to make comments on this video so that I can question your sincerity. Not really, but you know, it just kind of gives a little bit of a foundation to build upon. You know, so if you're going to do the what about versus X, Y, and Z, that's okay. Please do. I encourage you to do that. But I encourage you to be sincere with them rather than using them as a tool or as a weapon to steal, kill, and destroy a trust another viewer or myself or anyone might have in God. Okay, consider that when you pull Bible passages out and ask yourself, why is this important? Check your motives. That's between you and God. Okay, it's none of my business, really. It's between you and God, but check your motive. Why are you asking about this verse? Do you really want to know about a specific passage that seems to be in conflict with maybe the passages I'm sharing? Which is a good thing. It's good to question those kind of things. And I'm more than happy to have dialogue with you. Just stay sincere. Okay. Look me up on Facebook under a group called the White Guy Group. And I have that's a private group. I have an avatar name of Jonathan Jones also on Facebook, which is public. And leave me a thumbs up, thumbs down, please. And consider subscribing if you haven't already. And I'm going to leave links to where you can purchase my 3 books off Amazon, as well as supporting this channel, and my website that a friend recently designed for me. I'll leave links to all those. Thank you for viewing.